Welcome back to another episode of Generally Assembled, your favorite House Republican podcast. My name is Jason Gottesman, joined by Representative Jesse Topper. Mike Straub is once again out on assignment, meaning mostly that I forgot to tell him we were recording.
Poor devil.
Yeah.
Actually, I ran into Jordan from communications.
Which
Jordan,
one?
Jordan Fry.
Yes. Okay. There's a couple Jordans.
Yeah. There we go. And he said, I said we're going to go cut this podcast. He goes, Jesse, it's more than a podcast. And I don't know what that means.
What does he mean by that?
I think it sounds great though. Like to him,
Generally Assembled is more than a podcast.
Yeah, he looks forward to basically hearing what's going on through this podcast, maybe, or that's more to him. It's his. He listens to it maybe on the drive home. I don't know, but to him, when he's like, it's more than a podcast, I'm like, that could be a slogan.
It's more than
Generally
a podcast.
Assembled, more than just a podcast.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just thought I'd throw. And look, he's a communications guy, so.
Chuck, you got to throw that. You got to throw some music or something.
Yeah, more than just a podcast. Anyway, just some food for thought.
Wait, let's do it together. Ready? 1, 2, 3. More than just a podcast. Oh, that was awesome.
That was good. That was good. We're in sync. All right. Well, at least something's going right.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk kind of globally about some stuff that's been going on. We are 8 days away as we record this from the traditional budget deadline, and needless to say, I think on all fronts things aren't going so well.
No, I mean I believe that to get to a product in the time frame that and look, I said this last time. I do agree with Senator Pim. He came out and said the quality, it has to be a quality product. It's not just about whether it's on time, although that's certainly, but it has to be a quality product that protects the taxpayers, that ensures that I've said all along that you do two things with one-time money. And a lot of the money we have, even that we have in our quote surplus, it's one time. If you build this into future programs, if you spend all this money to start new programs and to pay for existing programs supplementally or increase line items, then you're building yourself a hole 10, 15, 20 years down the road. We seem to, Jason, we govern by the current year that we're in. And we look at that picture and say, this is the only picture we have a responsibility to. And it's not. We have a responsibility to the future. If you are going to make investments, make them in some one-time thing. We have infrastructure investments that we could make, whether it be school buildings, whether it be
and they have a long-term
bridges. They have a lot, right. And you can make those investments. But if you just continue to pour it into the black hole of the state budget that grows and grows and grows, then we're not able to accomplish that. Now, I believe that the governor actually doesn't want to do that by his budget address versus what he's saying. Right. But I can't differentiate right now between what Governor Shapiro wants or what the House Ds are pushing, which is clearly an idea of starting a bunch of new programs when we already, I don't believe, can sustain the ones we have. And look, everything can sound good. We're helping this, we're helping that. But you know what really helps Pennsylvanians? If people stay in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if we continue down this track and we don't have businesses or people that work in those businesses to pay taxes because they're all fleeing to North and South Carolina and Florida and Texas, then listen, why are we saying those states? How about Ohio? Mm-hmm. How about West Virginia? How about Maryland? How about the states that are right up against us? We have to be thinking long term, and I think the reason why this isn't going well right now is because we're not.
So what you're saying, and hypothetically, I tend to agree with you, that if you have some money to spend in a hypothetical world, you would rather invest that money into something like a new set of golf clubs that would be a long-term, multi-decade investment, rather than, let's say, going buying a couple thousand golf balls, which you might end up losing in 2 or 3 seasons.
Right, or the investment in a nice set of irons that you tell everybody, this could be my last set.
Yeah, right. It's going to last the rest of your life.
It might not. It might last 10 years until you need.
But we can't get into this fever dream of spending like people did 25 years ago with pensions, where they're like, hey, let's give everybody a big boost in their pension today because we can afford it today, and then we're really going to put people in a bind.
Or let's
10
stop
years from
making
now.
our pension payments because the market's taking care of it and everything's fine, and then the market, flips back and we haven't been fully funding it right. Those kind of decisions are short-term thinking. But let me get to the golf clubs back a second. We're not going to go off there real quick because, again, what everybody wants to do is invest in a new driver every year, right? The new latest and greatest driver.
Yeah.
And so you spend money and money and money on your driver year after year after year when the club that you hit most in your bag is your 9-iron.
Yeah.
And you maybe replace that once every 15 years.
Sure.
Like there is some, you do need to think about not just the flashy driver that you can try and come up with the new, tailor-made stealth every year, or you can say, let's invest in irons that are going to last us for the next 20 years.
Yeah.
See how I did that?
Yeah, even if those irons might be used and you got a really good deal on them.
That's right.
Yeah. And
Are you speaking from personal experience?
No, not really.
Okay.
No.
So they're new. They're not used to.
No, they're used. I only buy used golf clubs.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's a golfer of your caliber only buying pre-used clubs.
Well,
why is that?
It's because I'm smart. Trying to be smart with my money. Because most people it's like buying a used car, right? So you have folks that a lot of used cars are leases, prior leases, right? So you had people who used them for 2 to 3 years, didn't want to renew the lease. They like getting new cars, and then they dump them on a used car lot, right? Golf clubs are much the same way. You have a lot of demo clubs. You have a lot of guys who, just like you said, will go out and buy a set for a year or 2 years, and then when the new models come out, they get rid of those clubs and they trade them in to then buy the new model clubs. So you get these clubs at a significantly discounted rate. I just recently purchased a new driver, well, new used driver and a new used 3-wood.
Okay.
And both of them are model years like 2018. But also the technology is much different than my old clubs. So I'm upgrading technology to newer technology. It's not the newest, but it's better than what I had. And I think all of that is sort of a metaphor for prudent budget practices and financial responsibility. Is that hopefully I live to see a day where I can go and buy a new set of golf clubs every year. I would love to win the lottery and have that happen. But right now, the irons I'm playing, they're blade irons from my mom bought them for me in the year 2000.
Titleist?
Titleist, yep, DCI 990s. The 3-iron looks like you're hitting a butter knife. And it's time for some updated technology. And we'll
You're
see
going to go Titleist again?
We'll see how it works out. Coming up here, I have been eyeing some new Titleist irons, new used Titleist irons.
Josh has set Titleist irons.
Yeah,
very good.
Probably T200s.
Yeah.
Or T100s.
Is it T2s?
T2s are usually what you'd find out. The T100s are like the DCI 990s. You have to be like really good to get the max out of them. Frankly, I'm not nearly as good.
Yeah,
right now
his are better. Like I could never use. I have Callaways. I have ones that are very forgiving.
Yeah.
He has ones that are
and that's what I need
more
to move
college
to.
and
I need
level.
to move to a game improvement iron. I mean, I'm not a low handicapper. I like to consider myself a low mid handicapper. I'm a 12.
I tell you what, I really felt golf is one of those things like the budget process where you can feel really good and literally the same day feel really bad. I mean, when I played on Father's Day and played on the front 9 and felt really good. Shot 44, which at the country club I was playing out was pretty nice.
Yeah.
And then immediately fell apart on the back 9.
Yeah.
It was like negotiations. Going good, we're hitting spots, and then immediately take 5 steps backwards.
Well,
I honestly think we could do this whole budget in golf analogies.
Well, we should. I mean, the PGA and Live Tour and DP World Tour merger happened over a round of golf.
That's right.
Yeah, it's probably a smaller amount of money than the state budget. Or the state budget is a smaller amount of money.
Well, what they're putting in the state budget's like peanuts. That's what the...
Yeah, who knows? Or maybe we'll get some Saudi Arabian who comes in here and goes, I'm just going to want to buy this Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. You don't need to worry about this budget stuff anymore.
Yeah, we keep putting ourselves in debt. That might happen.
But I think, look, here we are, again, 8 days out. This budget is not going to get done because of House Democratic leadership. Let's just
not just are we 8 days out. Like, what is the marker in the sand? And I think the real problem when the House Democrats passed their budget, which was more and different than the original Governor Shapiro's budget address. Yeah. So where's the marker? Is it the governor's address budget? Is it the House D's budget that they passed? I think look, I think everyone is having a hard time coming to terms, including, by the way, both of the parties I just mentioned. Like, what's our starting point here? And I think we're starting from a point of responsibility. Like, let's not empty the rainy day fund. Let's not, as we just talked about, invest in new. But until we get serious and stop taking some of these political partisan votes on the floor, I think it's going to be very difficult to get this done in the time frame. But hopefully things come together quickly.
Yeah, point taken. And actually, and I don't know if you feel this way, but for me, this does feel a lot like Governor Wolf's first budget, in which I believe a product was sent out of the House, but nobody was really talking about a real budget, right? And then it got to be like, well, we're kind of talking and we're starting to talk, and those talks happened like with a week left.
But the difference with the Wolf first budget is when he came out of the gate, his budget request was laughable. I mean, It was the largest tax increase in the history on the Commonwealth.
But I think we've almost gotten there with the House Democrats.
Governor Shapiro's first budget address, Republicans applauded for the first half of the address more than the other side of the aisle. It definitely felt like...
Well, that you're right with. But, I think the only difference right now between what the House Democrats did and what Governor Wolf did in his first budget is that we have a fully funded rainy day fund and a surplus.
Right.
If not, we'd be talking about billions and billions of taxes to fund programs now. The only reason we're not talking about those taxes in the near term is because we have prudently managed over the last 12 years, and we have funds we can access now.
But what Pennsylvania needs to understand is with the adoption, if the House Democrats' budget was adopted, those billions of dollars of tax increases would come down the pike.
Yes, they would. Not this year or next year, but
that's right. That's right.
But I think that's the only difference is we didn't have money then. We do have the money now,
but some of that money.
What do we do with it? And that's the big question.
And again, some of the money that is out there in the economy today, I've called it monopoly money.
It absolutely
is. Which is that infusion of the Biden bucks from COVID that we have to be so ultra careful in how those are spent. Yes, I know they're out there. Yes, I know Pennsylvania got a certain amount of money, but the idea that that's sustainable, it's not. And by the way, it's also caused. Continues to cause the inflation issues that we see throughout the. Everything's more expensive.
Hey, I was down in D.C. for the first two federal stimuli, so you can partially blame me.
Oh, really? Yeah. Well, you didn't vote on them.
Well, no.
In fact, knowing the guy you worked for.
No, I think we might have done the first one. I don't think the second one.
Yeah. The first one was a little different. I mean, we were all in a situation of trying to figure out what exactly was going on with this pandemic.
It was the craziest one because the COVID really wasn't here yet. And we were kind of remember starting in the wave across Europe, and everybody's watching it,
Right.
And,
something's coming.
Something's coming, and then they're like, "What do we do?" And we're like, "Well, we're government. We could spend money." And everybody's like, "Yeah, that'll make us feel better for a few days."
Yeah.
But here we are still dealing with the ramifications of those bad decisions.
I want people to understand when we talk about the money in the rainy day fund. If you're like, "Oh, you got all this money you're sitting on," I believe it would fund government for 2 months.
2.5 months, I believe.
2.5 months is what it would fund. So we're not talking about money that's just, oh my gosh, you're sitting on.
No, we have I think an individual family would call it a modest savings account.
Yes.
We have the ability to get through a little bit of tough time, but we're still going to need to find a job to make ends meet long term, right? And that's where the taxes are, right? That's exactly what you're looking at. Okay, the house just burned down. It turns out the insurance lapsed. I can, put this money in, but I'm still going to need to go another job at Target, which, by the way, is paying $17 an hour. But it's not like I can't afford to not go back to work. Then it's the same thing with the taxes, right? Maybe we have the money now. If we start to spend it the way House Democrats do, it'll last us a year or two. But eventually we're going to need to go to tax increases. And that's what we're talking about.
Governing for the future. And to me, I know you guys are the communications guys, and there's all kinds of fancy slogans you can try and put on a lot of different things. But at the end of the day, I believe that our role needs to be, we're the ones who are prepared to govern for the future.
Yeah.
And I like that.
You'd be happy to know that our leadership team delivered that exact message in a press gaggle right after we left the floor.
Just right after. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And speaking of the future, let's talk a little bit about the past.
Okay.
U.S. Open. I think the listeners to Generally Assembled, more than just a podcast.
Yeah.
want to know when a major sporting event happens, how do we feel? And since the Pirates have lost 9 in a row, and I don't know if scored a run in 20 years, then it's time to
so good for a while.
It's time to talk about what were your thoughts. I mean, star-studdedly, my son's a big Ricky Fowler fan. I like Rory. I like Scotty Scheffler. Seeing kind of those giants at the top of the board, and then you have this young, not actually 29, which in the world of professional sports is really not young. A guy come up who just won for the first time a couple weeks ago, and he's in the mix at a venue that was never really a U.S. Open venue before. Created a lot of drama. What were your thoughts?
Well, I think Wyndham Clark was interesting. I mean, he's certainly an easy guy to get behind, and I think his story is even more amazing when I've read, I think earlier this week, that about 2 or 3 years ago, he almost gave up the game. And
That's right.
They needed to have an intervention from his family to kind of jumpstart his career again. And
he was breaking like a club around. Mentally, he just was angry all the time. Of course, for those who don't know, lost his mom to breast cancer when he was in playing for Oklahoma State.
Yep, and he had a transfer,
college. Yep.
I think, and that's a great story, and that's fine. I think I was really hoping Ricky would pull it out because I don't know how much juice Ricky has left in his career. It looks like his swing is much better. He's gotten rid of the flatness that he used to have.
It's just good for the game. I mean, when Ricky was at his peak, and I always thought that was good for fans, good for the game.
Yeah, he's
one
a real
of those
fan
guys. That was a real fan guy. I wanted to see him win. I'm like you. I can get behind Wyndham Clark, but I will say that it was kind of disappointing to watch 3 guys like Scheffler, McIlroy, and Fowler, and not one of them could really apply the kind of pressure. And McIlroy I thought played really well. We just missed putts, but they were good putts. He just missed them.
Well, this is the second time or third time in as many weeks where Rory McIlroy had a chance to make a run on Sunday, and ends up not doing so hot, which is kind of disappointing because, Rory's a big face of the game, and he's sort of got the persona to help fill the void of a Tiger Woods. He's level-headed. He's got the star-studded career. He's got the he started when he was super young.
Won a lot early.
Won a lot, correct, all that stuff. And, he's going to win a major again. At least I hope he does. He deserves it, especially for how much he put himself out there for the PGA Tour, only to not be rewarded. And it was funny, I saw an interview with Adam Scott, who's one of my favorite golfers, yesterday. And, I didn't really think so much about someone like him who's in a tough position, an Australian golfer, who probably felt a lot of pressure from Greg Norman to go over to the LIV Tour. And he's like, yeah, it's emotional. I stayed. I stayed because they told us there would be a path back. And now it looks like, and it's hard. It's hard on a lot of these guys. And Rory McIlroy was one of those folks who, was in front. And look, I'm well aware, as I'm sure you as an elected official, I put myself out there. You put yourself out there trying to justify and talk and defend and defend your bosses.
And look, right, and also go after former friends and former allies. I think of the guys who left. Patrick Reed, Dustin Johnson, some of those guys who then all of a sudden, Brooks Koepka, that you're in this situation of like, these were friends, now there's lawsuits involved. It was like I liken that to, everybody's been through those family situations that get a little ugly.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that shouldn't really happen with family. But what it really spoke of to me, when you look at the game of golf, and the reason why I love it so much is because it is truly, the mental aspect is truly about life. There you have Ricky Fowler, who people thought his career was over, went in the tank for 3 years, one of the most popular guys at the top of the world. And when he came back and they said, how are you going to approach this Sunday round? He goes, I'm not afraid to fail anymore. And then you have a guy like Wyndham Clark that was going to give up the game of golf, that these two guys are in the final round when they were at the very rock bottom. And I think that's so important. We can talk a lot about politics, and obviously we do because we're in it. But really, there's a lot of changes that need to happen culturally in our world that are not about legislation. It's about saying, are we going to continue to perpetuate this idea that we're all victims, that we can't rise up, kind of pull ourselves up by our bootstraps and say we're going to make a difference in the world, and just constantly complain about who's against us and who offends us, or are we going to say, what, no matter what we've been through, no matter how tough things have been, we're Americans.
Yep.
We live in the greatest nation and the greatest hope of opportunity that's out there. We have the ability to start taking some control of our own life, get rid of this entitlement mentality of everybody else taking care of us, and really start to pick. Nobody helps if it wasn't for these guys and their support system, nobody was just going to prop them up.
Yep.
Like they had to just say, look, if you want to be at the top again, go earn it.
Yep.
And maybe that's a metaphor for those of us in the minority right now, and even people who think that they themselves are in the minority, not as a political party, but just in the way they think culturally. Well, then go out and start changing the culture. Do something that elevates your ideas and your thoughts. And that's kind of what I know. That's pretty deep to watch a sporting event and think that, but when you see those guys in the final round, that's what I thought about. Like the kind of mental sustaining willpower it takes to bring yourself back up is exactly what we need.
Yeah, and that's, I think, what differentiates golf, which has always drawn me to it, as opposed to other sports, is, when you have a guy on the Phillies, take Bryce Harper, a lot has been written about last couple of days about how he hasn't hit home runs recently. Mm-hmm. When you have a guy who's slumping, you can still win because you have other people around you that can pick up the slack. In golf, some of these guys, Jordan Spieth went through it, Wyndham Clark, even Rory McIlroy for a few years was not playing.
Justin Thomas is going through it right now.
Yeah, absolutely. It is on them. There is nobody that's going to come in and help win tournaments for them.
Yep.
They have to figure it out themselves, and that takes years. You get this gunk in your swing. I gave up the game of golf after high school. I couldn't deal with it anymore. I was playing like dirt. I couldn't figure it out. I was way inside my head. I didn't play golf for 2.5 years. And then I found out golf could be fun. Mm-hmm. And when I'm having fun, I'm playing better. But it's different. It's different for everybody. You got to reach down inside and figure it out. And a lot of guys, look, there's a ton of guys who can go out on a golf course and shoot 66, no problem. But you put them in a tournament,
sure,
and they're shooting 84. Because it's different.
So I heard this from a guy who played professionally, not at the highest level, the PGA Tour, but played on what now it's called the Korn Ferry Tour. I think that was called the Nationwide Tour. And he was one of the best putters, a guy who never missed a putt until he was on tour, couldn't make those cuts, and ended up getting out of the game professionally. And I'm asking him, I got to meet him, and I said, what was the difference for you? He goes, it's different when you're putting for a mortgage payment.
Yeah.
Like when that's your job to make that 6-footer, because if you don't, you miss your mortgage payment. That kind of pressure is a little different than out with your friends on
you're
Saturday
drinking a few beers, hitting, doing hit and giggle.
But again, I think that we can all look at that and maybe learn a little something from it, because I don't know about you, but I'm really tired of the whining mentality of everybody's against on both. And again, this is not a one side or the other. It's just kind of the general culture of always looking to blame somebody else.
Yep.
And let's start looking in the mirror as a society and saying, if we see something that needs changed, let's go into the field and let's change it.
I'm hearing a lot from Jesse Topper that more professional golfers need to run for office.
and those of us who are running for office just need to go play golf.
Yes. Well, that's it for Generally Assembled for this week. More than just a podcast. We will be back next week with another episode. It may be close to budget, who knows? But until then, you can find us where all of your favorite House Republican podcasts are found, www.phousegop.com/mypodcasts. We'll see you at the next one. Beep, boop, beep.